Welcome to Scary World, where we walk you through the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I am your host, Arturo Padilla. Before we get into it, we have one major rule around here. No spoilers.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil the surprise.
Now that that's out of the way,
We got some rules around here.
there are 5 categories.
5 of them.
Each category can earn up to 2 points.
2 points.
First up, production.
We have such sights to show you.
How good the movie looks and sounds. The overall execution. Story.
I want a story.
A story about what?
Is it good? Is it coherent? Is the dialogue written well? Is everything well structured and put together? Ensemble.
Any of them move, you fry 'em.
How do the characters gel? Are the characters well developed? Do the actors do a good job? Horror.
Is it scary?
How do the horror elements fare? Was there blood and gore? How were the kills? Is it scary? Legacy.
Penny for your thoughts?
My overall thoughts and how this movie adds to the horror genre.
Showtime.
On today's show, we'll be covering the movie Mayhem. Per IMDb, the synopsis goes, a model prisoner's leave ends in tragedy
Was an unimaginable tragedy.
when his past resurfaces, forcing him to flee.
Fly!
He starts over in Thailand until a local criminal coerces him back into crime.
Come back!
After this local criminal attacks his family, he vows revenge.
Mine is just good old-fashioned revenge.
Production.
Look at me!
This movie was directed by French filmmaker Xavier Jeance. His feature debut was Frontiers, which was one of my favorite French extreme horror flicks. He also directed Hitman. So that being said, you know this man has an eye for action and violence and brutality. And this is exactly what shines in this movie. He also helped write the script as well, which we'll get to that in the next section. But as far as his eye for action, this director knows how to shoot that hand-to-hand melee kind of close-up combat. Everything is shot very tight. You see all the action that's going on. You see every kick, every punch, every stab. It's very well shot. It's very well lit as well. Jeance enables the audience to see absolutely everything, and you definitely want to see everything because the fight choreography in this movie is absolutely some of the best I've seen in a long time. Everything looks great. Everything looks impactful. Looks like it freaking hurts, and for that, freaking kudos to that. It was awesome. Jeance as well knows how to shoot landscapes. Majority of it takes place in Thailand, and we see vast landscapes, cityscapes, rural landscapes as well that put us in the shoes of our characters, and we understand the environment a lot better because of how everything looks. For production, this movie gets a 2, so good job, Mr. Jeance. Story.
Second act needs work.
There is a decent story in this movie. There really is. Unfortunately, it wasn't executed as well as it could have been. The script is slow. It drags for the majority of the movie. It takes about 40 minutes or so to really get into the action. Once you get to that point, at least, you know, the script livens up a little bit, and the action takes you the rest of the way. But getting there was a little bit of a chore, I have to say, to be honest, just because of how everything was structured. Specifically, one of my biggest gripes of this movie was the dialogue and the languages used in this movie. I don't mind myself reading subtitles and foreign horror and foreign action flicks. Don't mind those at all. But what I do mind is when you interchange the languages in a way that kind of removes you from that environment. Specifically, the English thrown into this movie seems way out of place. I wouldn't have expected a bunch of these characters to know English as well as they did, and that really kind of threw me off. Our characters start with in France, so our protagonist starts speaking French, and then he moves to Thailand for about 5 years, and he doesn't talk that much Thai, and speaks French and some English sprinkled in there. That's really, that one didn't really sit well with me, because if you're going to be in a location for 5 years and, and work in the area and stuff, you might as well, speak some of the language. So I really would have liked them to stay with the native languages of those of the settings of France and of Thailand. Aside from the languages, as I said before, the story itself, there is a decent story there to be mined, but unfortunately, it needed better execution. And for story, Mayhem gets a 1. Ensemble.
Oh, God. Here we go.
This movie's cast was not the best, to be honest. There was very poor character development throughout the entire ensemble. The support fared better than the protagonist, but even that needed, some better development, especially when it came to relationships between characters. There was, they had relationships, but they were poorly defined. Protagonist, honestly, was boring and lacked proper conviction during a bunch of the emotional beats. Actor Nassim Lyles plays Samir/Sam, our protagonist. He does a fantastic job for the action, so you can tell this dude is a martial artist of some sort, and all the action sequences look great. I mean, look really spot on, and he's fantastic in the action sequences, but in the parts that really matter, I feel that he needed a lot of work. You don't really get some of the emotion you need from his character. It doesn't come across as well as it should have. Back to the character dynamics and relationships, as I mentioned, like none of them are really defined that well, which really gets confusing when things start happening later on in the movie and, our characters are on screen and you're like, oh, I wasn't really sure how this character related to this character and their actual relationship. So for ensemble, this movie gets a big old 0 because it needed a lot of work to do with their characters. Horror. There's a lot of blood and blood and blood and more blood in this movie. There is awesome use of gore. There's a lot of it and it looks great. It's all practical, the majority of it, aside maybe from maybe some gunshot wounds and a little bit of blood splatter, but the majority of it is all practical. It looks fantastic on the screen, and it definitely helps elevate this movie to a point where you're like, okay, it's watchable now. I cannot say enough about the use of practical gore in this movie because it really stands out and really helps this thing be a certified action flick in the last act of this movie. For horror, for gore, for all the blood, Mayhem gets a big old 2. Legacy.
Now make up your mind.
This movie doesn't leave behind a big legacy, unfortunately. As mentioned before, the action is superb and fantastic, but nothing really that we haven't seen before. We've seen it before in a better package. The Raid, for instance, way better package than this movie was. The story was way better in that movie. The action was equivalent, if not just as good. As mentioned before, the action here was great, and it has been the best action I've seen in a long time, but action doesn't hold a movie up, in my opinion. You need a story, you need proper character relationships, proper character development. You needed better execution of everything, honestly. The script especially, and the dialogue with the 3 languages was very off-putting. I wish they just stuck to the actual French and Thai. I don't understand why English was thrown in there all of a sudden. That was really upsetting and really kind of brought this film down for me. And for that, for Legacy, Mayhem gets another 0. So to wrap it up, Mayhem received a 2 in production, a 1 in story, a 0 in ensemble, a 2 for horror, and a 0 in legacy, bringing the total to 5. This movie wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. The action was what really kind of kept me in this. As mentioned throughout the review, the movie dragged. Took about 40 minutes or so for me to really get into this thing. Fortunately, the action in the 3rd act was fantastic and actually kept me awake and alive throughout the remainder of this movie. If you're into heavy action, a lot of violence and brutality, awesome fights, this movie is right up your alley. Go check it out anywhere you get your VOD.
Can you tell me what time it is?
That's all she wrote, folks. Thank you for watching Scary World. Don't forget to drop a comment down below, as well as like the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe. and share this page with all your buddies. Let them know. Show up to CorpseFeed for the latest and greatest in the world of horror. Don't forget, too, we have the morgue coming at you every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. You can check out the archives here on the YouTube channel. You can also check out the podcast anywhere you get your podcast streams. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, anywhere you get your streams, the morgue will be there. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, all right? Don't forget to go to the socials and add us in all your social feeds on X, on Instagram, on where else? On Facebook. Add us, share us, subscribe to all our stuff. Send us an email at feedmailbag@gmail.com if you need to. And remember, it's a scary world out there, but we are here to walk you through it.
Just wanted to say goodbye.